Okay, so this is the Notice of Planning and Zoning Commission special meeting, Thursday, January 18th, 2018. Notice is hereby given of the special meeting of the Woodbridge Town Planning and Zoning Commission to be held on Thursday, January 18th at 6:30 in the Senior Cafe of the Senior Center Building, 4 Meeting House Lane, Woodbridge. This is a modification and clarification of section 3.1.2.12 of item number 12 of the zoning regulations for the town of Woodbridge. Changes proposed by the Town Planning and Zoning Commission regarding residential uses of the general business district. Then we'll go into our work session. So, a couple things I can cover. One is Mr. Greenberg had asked me, although it is above my pay grade, but he didn't seem to be concerned about that, I've noticed.
Not at all.
So he was questioning a 650 square foot footprint, and so I've gone to the liberty of printing out different. These are all different. So, but one of the things we should make clear, and this actually, I'm going to go back and forth and answer in response to some of the 2 letters that we got, which I don't know. The POCD has encouraged us as an action to adopt in the area of the flats. I shouldn't call it flats, but whatever. Lower Woodbridge of increasing density. The POCD talks about the fact that this is encouraging increasing supply of a starter housing for young professionals. It isn't necessary, and the idea is, and this is all part of our POCD discussions, that we wanted to we wanted to know how we were going to get younger people moving into town. And so one of the ways we thought about doing this is creating a village-like atmosphere in the lower Woodbridge, and create housing for people to be renting or owning. But the idea is that people would say, okay, I don't really want to live in New Haven, I want to live in Woodbridge. And the idea is that they become involved in Woodbridge while they're living here, and then they eventually decide to have a family and move up the hill and buy a house like your house, for instance, since you're close to being empty. I mean, you're on the hill, dude.
Not as close as I'd like.
Yeah, you're close. Yeah, I know. But that's the idea. That was the point behind this. We already have an approved project, whether it gets built or not, but we already worked on the assumption through the POCD that we have this approved project for senior housing 55 and over, which is actually quite a large area in the Woodbridge Village District. So the point of changing this is to create, I'm going to refer to it as starter housing because that's the terminology we used in the POCD. So along with the other charge that was requested of me above my pay grade, I went and looked at other towns. And so in Westport.
Send me your bill.
I know, I'm going to. I'll probably get the same check I always get. In Westport, a studio 1-bedroom is, their size is 450 square feet to 500 square feet. Milford, 625 square feet. Orange, 650 square feet for a 1-bedroom. Okay? In Connecticut, and according to a New York Times article, granted it's from 1987, so I'm sure it's changed, but 48 Connecticut towns allow 600 to 900 square feet for studio to 1-bedroom units. As a side, Boston is 450 to 600 square feet. Atlanta, 500 square feet for a 1-bedroom. HUD, by the way, uses 400. So that puts it in perspective. It's 650 is not this, I don't think it's this crazy number. It's not like a micro apartment. The micro apartments that I looked at, like in the city, in New York, and that are in DC, are actually much smaller. They're like 300-400 square feet, and people live in them.
It costs $500,000.
And it costs a lot of money. Yeah, it costs a lot of money. But my point is, it's this 650 square feet we're talking about is not a ridiculous number, I don't think, anyway.
Is it our intent to limit it to one-bedroom units?
I think that, especially in the GB district, I think the GB district is actually pretty built up as far as commercial. And so the idea is to create housing in there, but not an excessive amount of housing. I think we really want to have more housing, and maybe if we want to talk about larger units, in the area where we're going to have more, where we create these live-work situations, where there's work on the first, commercial on the first level, and then apartments up above. Those apartments, I could see those possibly getting a little bit larger, but this is so built up already with commercial, we don't really want to start killing the commercial area in order to put more housing in there. It kind of defeats the purpose of what we're trying to do here. So it's really just, we're really just talking about limiting the size of these units in one area that's it's pretty built up already as far as commercial. We obviously don't want to lose that stuff in there. We also have we can go back and forth on this, but we also have a letter from Scrog. Thank you for sharing the proposed zoning regulation amendments. The Regional Planning Commission reviewed the proposal at its meeting on Thursday, January 11, 2018. By resolution, the RPC has determined that the proposed zoning regulation amendments do not appear to cause any negative intermunicipal impacts to the towns in the South Central region, nor do they appear to be any impacts to the habitat ecosystem over Long Island Sound. Contact any questions, blah, blah, blah. That's good. Just to respond to a couple things that were in these letters. In Mr. Urbano's letter, he talks about, he's concerned about empty nesters professionals. Again, we're kind of thinking that empty nesters, this is really more the area of young professionals moving in, and they don't necessarily need a home office, library, storage, exercise room, dining room, etc. He talks about the proposed boundary modification, which excludes 240 Amity Road. I'm not really sure why he picked on 240 Amity Road to be the property to pick on, but it happens we've made our decision for the line cutting as we've stopped it right at the point where the road goes from a single lane to 3 lanes, so that the idea is people can walk across a 2-lane road easier than they can go walk across a 3 and 4 lane road, and 240 happens to sit in front of 3 lanes instead of 2 lanes. He also talks about, I mean, again, this doesn't really have anything to do with this, but I mean, he talks about it. Our first selectman ran a platform to promote economic development. That is true. He should bring that up with her. But she didn't run on a platform where said she was going to change zoning. She just ran on a platform that said she wanted to promote economic development. And so that's not really us. We're not the one that ran for office. So I'm not really sure how to respond to what he's saying as far as that. Mr. Torrance sends a letter. Small offices, blah, 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 new urbanism. He's suggesting that we're not following new urbanist concepts. The regulation, he also talks about the town should have a full-time planner. Between you and me, as a taxpayer, I don't think we necessarily need a full-time planner. It seems extreme. We actually have a planner we're using as a part-time. She's a consultant. And so I think that works for us. And also he should understand that the new regulation was written by Leslie, and it's based on the SMART code by the Congress of New Urbanism. So that is what he's talking about. We're not following, but actually this is where it comes from. So just so everybody understands, we're not trying to skirt any issues here. I think that's pretty much all I have to say. Well, answer questions or comments?
We started with 1,250 square feet, and we're reducing it to 650 square feet. And, several things come to mind. One is why. Two, are we limiting the flexibility we have for development in that area? And, we might want young professionals, but there might be other people that would like to benefit from residing in that area.
I guess
My problem with it.
Yeah, well, I hear you, and that's why I thought it was an interesting exercise to see what other towns consider studio or one bedrooms. This is just one area of the downtown area that we're affecting our regulations.
all the things that we've been working on with Leslie, actually try to focus live-work situations in the area of Lucy Street and that area, so between 63 and 69. So it's just in the this one GB area that we're saying we want the units to be smaller. The 1,250 square feet, by the way, there's no science to that number. This is just a number that Mr. Urbano said this is what he wants. 1,250 square feet is a good sized unit. So I don't think that's what we're really looking for down there. I can see that possibly being on the other side of the street as far as larger units, but where people can go out there, walk, and they're on sidewalks and things like that. I think we're, so I think I've kind of explained the other things. I hear what you're saying, but I mean, the 1,250 was arbitrary. It came from a developer that wants to do a project. Our 650
It's also arbitrary.
what's arbitrary?
The 650 is.
No, the 650 is not arbitrary. It came from the planner who actually did research on it. And to follow along with that, I just gave you a list of 6 different municipalities who all have the same numbers, and actually less. So that's not as arbitrary as 1,250.
But you're limiting it to, in most instances, 1 bedroom, very small ones.
You are talking about studios and 1 bedroom, although I think there is a plan that shows a 2-bedroom unit,
Yeah,
a 2-bedroom unit of
bedroom.
650 square feet. So it's not out of the question. I don't, 650 square feet, no matter what you say, is not a, it's not a 3,000 square foot house. It's never gonna look like that. So you get 2 rooms. I mean, I'm happy to take you in and show you where my kids live right now. So, I mean, this is all small stuff. And by the way, when you're younger, you can get away with living in smaller space.
But if you're older and you want to live there,
You wouldn't necessarily be living in these units, I agree, but there's other options out there. If the 55 and over project actually gets built, there's options to go there. We can continue the discussion and change the size of these units when we move to the other side of the street where we're trying to create more people walking on the sidewalks. So it's not like we're eliminating anything. We're just curbing the size of the units in one part of the downtown area. I'm not asking to live there,
I'd like to.
but if Gail throws you out,
Always possible.
Never.
I don't think so either. So, anyone else?
Well, one question. The exact area that this would apply to. Yeah, that's one.
And this line, pretty close to where the 2 lanes goes into 3, I think it's 3 lanes up here. So the idea was this is an easy place to cross, this is a natural place to cross. So.
So Jeff, it's presently 1,250, right? Is that what it is now, or it's not?
Yes.
And so, per
So
the,
that, right, and so we're not, the application, that person has an application, this isn't affecting him at all. So this has nothing to do with
Yes, I understand, but presently it's 1250. It's
That's correct.
1200. Right, that's what it is now. Right.
If take comments from the, you might have one comment. Anybody want to speak?
Well, I probably have more questions now that I've heard all this. So presently, should I just sit here or you should state your name? Well, there's, okay, Diane Urbano, 52 No Peace Road, Woodbridge. So Jeff, currently it's $12.50 for the whole GB district.
That's correct.
And now we're considering $6.50 for part of the GB district, limited to 8 units. Is that right?
8 units per acre.
8 units per acre. But when you look at the size of the plots there, there aren't many that are greater than an acre.
No, but you
Right.
can't base it on that. You have to base it on the fact that anybody can buy 2 lots. Or 3 lots.
Okay, that's interesting.
So you have to
So-
kind of count that in there.
Right, so Jeff, this is just my thinking with it, and I want to preface it by saying, this has been a long time in coming, and I know all of you have worked very hard, as have others. And so it's an exciting moment, I feel. And even though it doesn't look like there's a lot of interest, it is important. I feel it is important, for the town and so forth. So that's why I'm coming to these.
There are millions of people watching.
Yeah.
Oh, actually,
Remember the horror again. But
That's free of me.
but
We'll be watching.
Right, we'll be watching. So, like, when I saw this, Jim has his project, he saw a vision. Gratefully, you supported the vision, you saw it. The 1250, arbitrary, but it pretty much sort of like you came up with 4 to 6, not you, but out in the universe. There's rhyme and reason to it, When I see what we're talking about now, and I look at the reality of what's there, I really wonder about the feasibility of anything really being done, of any of it really being built from a developer standpoint. Okay, so it's a concern I have that I hope that you would consider because we want to have it happen, right? And it happens when a developer feels like she can be successful, right? And these units, everyone who's here knows that smaller units per square foot cost more, right? So 8 an acre, come on,
I'm not buying into that, but okay.
Okay, well, been my experience, and certainly square footage, you get more for, well, anyway. So that's something I would really like you to consider. What is, with this decision, with this changing it, how does it impact the likelihood that it would happen? I was under the impression, until tonight where I heard you, I didn't really know that then you're considering other housing parameters for other areas. So I would hope that all of the GB district, there is housing of at least some sort available, because I think that it's really important that we have housing and neighborhoods on one side of 69, and we have housing on Amity Road. And I think what's critical to the district being vibrant is that they're connected with people who live there. And with this particular change right now, right, you're taking housing away from the whole GB. Is that right? And then just putting it,
There's still housing allowed in the GB.
so someone could develop condominiums or
650 square feet?
in the whole GB district?
In the GB district that we've.
Well, that's my point. That,
Okay, well, so let's
You see-
try to explain. I'm not actually, I don't necessarily agree that all residential needs to be abutting residential.
oh, I'm not agreeing with, I'm saying,
Well, when you
but
say
it
that,
be
you're
linked.
saying they should be linked, but I'm not really sure why they need to be linked. I mean, there's housing, I mean, that's.
Well, it
that
seems
doesn't
like,
seem to make sense.
because to me, Jeff, then it feels sort of like, why not, it's like a highway going through two neighborhoods.
No, actually, I don't see it as a highway at all. I think we're creating a village and an area that people are going to be out on the sidewalk. There's no other sidewalks in Woodbridge. There's only going to be sidewalks in this area. There's going to be benches.
I
down here,
hope it's the
light.
case. You know, it's what we want to see.
That is what the long-term plan, that is what our
Okay.
10-year plan encourages. And so that's why we're going through all this exercise with Leslie and changing these regulations. So hopefully they get adopted so that we can bring more of those things into that area. But the idea is we want people to be walking and roaming around this village area. You don't necessarily, no one's ever thought that we're gonna start running sidewalks up Amity Road all the way up to the residential area.
Yeah, that's
So-
ridiculous.
Yeah, exactly.
But Lucy Street's a key, right?
Well, sure, that's that area, so.
Right.
But, so you are still allowed to be doing this in that area.
So 650, so I didn't understand the line. 650 could be on Lucy Street now, on 8 units up to 1 acre. That's not how I understood it.
Lucy Street's not on that.
No, Lucy Street's not on part of GB zone. Lucy Street is only on I'm gonna say 90% of it is on the left-hand side of Amity Road going up. On the right-hand side,
It's from June Street up to Surf Pro,
Right.
okay, on
Which
Amity
makes
Road.
sense.
And then it goes back
Goes
like
back.
3 blocks, behind all the buildings in the
Selwyn
wooded
and
area.
Hazel Terrace.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. So,
And so here, and Lucy's over here. So this is the area where we're talking about,
doing what?
we're working on additional regs to do other areas to create housing over there, increase housing density there as well.
Well, that's what I think is critical, and that's
Yeah,
what's.
I agree.
Sort of.
So that's the
missing.
idea, is that you're creating this village area where people are gonna be walking around and sidewalks and things like that. And then there's also some residential in here. This is pretty dense right now with commercial already. So it's not that easy to say that someone's just gonna come in and start building condominiums in here. You'd be better off building stuff over here.
Exactly, Jeff, that's my thought. Will this actually happen by making these regulations, you know?
Well, we'd only
Look at
change the
reality.
regulations on the idea that we're saying to developers, we're interested in doing this in our town. As you know, we can't really force anybody to do anything. We have an approved project that's been on the board for, is it 10 years yet?
It's approaching it.
So
Close to
10 years,
45. I
and
know
they
well.
haven't,
I
they
know.
haven't started yet.
I know.
So, we only have so much control over things.
No, I understand.
But I think by changing our, right now, nobody would think to come to us and say, we want to do a live-work situation. We would like to put a 3-story building in here, or we want to put lofts up here and things. Nobody would ever come to us with something like that because our regulations don't even allow it. So it would be too far-fetched. So if we can change, adopt our regulations, and hopefully you'll be here and all your friends encouraging us to approve it. I'm not kidding. Then we'll pass that stuff. So it is kind of an uphill battle. But it is, if you look at the POCD, that is the plan on the POCD, to increase some housing density for either empty nesters or young professionals, on the idea that young professionals would move there, they're renting, they get married, they move up the hill, they buy a house.
Okay, so I'll just leave it at this. I think that your first idea of the GB of up to 1,200, 1,250 seemed to me, and you know my perspective, so, you know, more likely to encourage developers coming than what you're doing now.
Yeah.
But all being said, it's wonderful that this is moving forward.
So, just so that I always have that last word,
Go ahead.
the 1,250 is kind of arbitrary. The 650, I can give you a whole sheet that says this is a standard size for these units. I agree that people live in 3, 4, 5, 6,000 square foot houses.
Yeah.
We're not, I noticed nobody's saying anything about that idea. So this 1,250 is what someone came up with, because that's what kind of fits there, so I get it.
I'll still give you the last word, but this is the thing, it's up to 1250. So, or you could make it up to 14, you could make it, but I really agree with that. The 650 actually fits, New Haven has a lot of it for what you're looking for, and it works. I am just saying, for a developer, different configurations, to have the latitude to do 1,000, and then 800, and then 600, is more. But
again-
that's what I was trying to say.
And so, again, but I'll stop.
Okay, I'm gonna stop, I promise.
But the fact is, the new stuff that they're building in New Haven is not 1,250 square feet.
Oh, I know.
Okay, so
No, I
you're
know
talking
that.
about much less than 1,250 square feet. So we're in this is a good range. This is a completely logical range that we can
Okay.
explain easily.
Okay.
So. Oh,
So we have to close.
are there any other comments from the,
We have to close. Close it,
yeah, if no one has any, yeah, we can close the hearing. We all ready? Very good. We'll close the hearing and go into our work session. Sound
Jeff,
good?
we should just note that since Stephen came in after the hearing had started, that David would be seated in his place, and that,
David?
I'm sorry, that Jeff is seated in his place, and that Andrew Skolnick is seated in place of Paul Schatz, who's not here this evening.
Okay, sorry to start. You can vote just to make it look good. But no,
Yeah,
you
vote on the amendment.
Chris, so does that mean I'm voting?
You're voting, and Andy's voting.
Understood.
All right. Okay, so we're now in our work session.
Yes.
Is there any more discussion?
So just so I understand, so I'm not sure I completely understand, would this 650 square foot limitation apply to the rest of the GB district ultimately as well? Is that the plan?
No, we're changing the area in red is the only area that will have any resident, any housing in it. And in this, 650 max.
So there is no housing on the other side of 69?
Well, this is 63.
I understand what this is. I'm talking about the other
No,
side.
we're not talking about anything over there right now.
Right now, that's what I'm saying. But you're talking about the entirety of the goals and the plan. And again, just by way of question, is it the goal and the plan to limit the size of residential units in those other areas about which we've been speaking to?
So I don't have that stuff with me, but if we look at the draft regulations from Leslie, I think she does have some square footage maximums in there, but I don't know what it is. I don't remember. So, but that has nothing to, I mean, I hear what you're saying, but obviously this is only on the left side of 63.
That, I understood that.
Okay, I thought so. Okay. Cool. Anything else? Can't decide whether you look pained or not.
I'm not married to the 1250, but I think the 650 is too restrictive.
Well, then you should encourage you to have a strong opinion when we cross the street. Seriously, I hear what you're saying. That's all. I mean, I will tell you, again, you and I talked about this, and initially I kind of questioned the same thing, but then when I started doing all the
Research.
legwork, I'm like, oh, there's much lower numbers than what we've picked out here. The other thing is, Mary Ann took our special exception that we have in our regs and tweaked it a little bit for, to be used in the GB, because we need to show a special exception, what our rules are for a special exception. So I have that. This is pretty close to the one that was used for liquor stores.
So the midterm action agenda on the POCD talks about increase the supply and values of housing in the village district, engage development community in identifying and removing barriers to new appropriately scaled multifamily housing in the village on or near Route 63 and 69. The other part says expand Woodbridge's menu of housing options, encourage an increase in the supply of starter homes and housing appropriate for young professionals in the village district mixed-use area, which this is part of it, and provide smaller, lower maintenance housing options with and without age restrictions such as in-law units for related persons, which we've talked about too. So this fits exactly with the POCD, just to
dot the i's.
dot the i's and cross the t's. Some of us didn't memorize it.
Are you proposing that this becomes part of the zoning regs, the special exception requirements?
Yes.
Okay, so does that mean you'd have to schedule a hearing on this? If not, why not, if you're amending the zoning regs?
Good evening, Mary Ann Dubuque. So you are in the process of amending this particular regulation, and this particular regulation already says it's subject to a special exception. So this is just telling you what you're supposed to be looking at when you're deciding a special exception. So it's part of this same regulation. It would fit exactly, because in your regulations, you don't have a section on special exceptions generally. You just have it in connection with certain uses. So in the past, when you adopted a use that had a special exception, you had regulations and requirements just for that. But in this particular case, we just discovered that you didn't specifically do that. And you can do that because as part of the process of amending a specific regulation, you publish the legal notice, you put everybody in the community on notice that this is the regulation you're talking about, and you can decide what goes with that regulation once you tell everyone that this is the regulation you're working on. So this is not a separate regulation. This is tied exactly to this regulation, and it's on your own motion. So the whole purpose of having a public hearing and discussing a regulation is that you're allowed to modify it based on what you would like to do. So all this does is basically clarify the framework for the special exception, so that when you do get an application, you know what you're going to be looking at. And you can refine this down the road. The idea was just to give you a little bit of a basic framework, because the regulation that we're talking about tonight says by special exception. So here you have a little bit of clarity as to what that would be, and it's based exactly on your other regulations. There's nothing.
Are these guidelines, or these are the only
Those are
things you
guidelines.
consider?
Those are your special exception guidelines.
But you can consider other things.
You can consider what's in your regulations for site plans. That's the way your regulations are set up. So this just gives you a little bit more of a framework.
The one thing that concerns me is that this applies to residential use in the GB district. So therefore, as opposed, what we set up here is, what do we call it? With the red line, GB-A. The question is, should it be, does this apply to A? Should it apply to everything?
Everything meaning,
The entire GB,
Well-
or should there be something different for A versus the rest of the GB?
the re,
And by the way, under the proposed regulations that we're considering, aren't we changing all this anyway, in terms of GB and everything else?
well, yeah. Well, we can.
Yeah, in terms of T1 and
T4.
Yeah,
TVs and all
yeah,
that.
but remember, this, the way it's set up right now, it's for the whole GB zone. By doing what we're doing tonight, we're eliminating, so in other words, the stuff that happens on the rest of GB is not gonna happen. The only place you can do any residential is in this red area. It's not like this is it for GBA, and then you're still allowed to do whatever around in the rest of GB. That isn't true.
Okay.
So before, it was saying that the whole thing was the whole GB. Now we're saying, okay, we want to tighten this up. We don't really want to have the whole GB open to residential. We want to limit it. And so that's what the red line is for.
Correct me if I'm wrong, part of it, I mean, you have, where the single family home? Isn't it in GB? Aren't some of the single family homes in GB?
Well, but it's still the
No,
GB.
no, it's not in here, but it's still in GB.
Yeah.
The only single-family homes I can think of are like, actually over here up on like Hazel Terrace.
Because this is all in terms of when it's residential and connected, associated with business use. It has nothing to do with, at least that proposal, purely residential use. Correct? I.e., there are homes here, and if somebody wanted to knock it down and put up a new home, they could do it.
I'm sure you would, but yes.
Huh?
I'm sure you would, but yes.
Well, I don't think.
Yeah, but yes.
And do you need a special exception requirement to just put up a home?
Well, it was part of our initial,
I don't remember.
our initial change was, it's at the end, we put in there by special exception.
But that
So as
wasn't-
long as we did that,
But that, wasn't that all in connection with residential in association with business use?
With legal non-residential use.
Right.
no, say this again? No, it had to do with special. The thing is, even when we were going through all our regulations with Leslie, there were all these things that everybody kept saying, well, we want to do that by special exception. Well, we want, and why do we want, and we kept asking, why do we want to do this by special exception? Oh, you have more control over
Yeah,
it
but-
if it's a special exception.
I'm just concerned that when it has nothing to do with mixed use, meaning someone's putting up a single-family home, or in some places, two-family homes, which are permitted, it's only by special exception?
Alan, currently in the general business district, residential uses, except for what you adopted in November, are not allowed.
Are they? Okay, then I'm mistaken. Okay.
Okay, so
I
this
mean,
is
they're in there,
defining
but it's not necessarily
that
part of the.
change that you did
Oh, you
in
mean,
November.
so it's all, what's ever in there has been grandfathered in there?
Correct.
Okay.
So if
Thank you.
somebody wanted to go build a new single-family house in there, our regs currently don't allow it.
Okay. Thank you. Because I knew there were single-family homes there.
Yeah.
Correct.
Huh? Yes, we have heard from them, but,
Yeah, where do we have it?
but they're all grandfathered in. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, so if there's no other questions, does somebody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Can I ask a question? Seconded. So one of these models has a two-bedroom. That means that one would have to have 2 parking spaces.
Yeah. One parking space per resident, that's correct.
So there's going to be more room for the cars than there is for people.
Likelihood of 2 bedrooms.
Well, a
Chances
two-car
are
garage is
It's really
100.
slim.
Two-
It's
two-
really slim, okay, I get it.
A two-car garage is 144 square feet. Well, by the way, just drive around and look at how houses are. Look at people's 3 and 4 bedroom, 4-car garages next to their houses. How many times do you say, oh, the garage is bigger than the house?
Yeah. I just don't know if we say one, I don't know, it's just because we've actually overestimated parking. And with this, because it's already attached to a legal non-residential use, presumably that means there's parking affiliated with that. So I just want to make sure we're not contributing to more.
People can always ask for a waiver. And they can ask, I mean, that's a special exception.
Right.
They can always say, can we do 1 bedroom, blah, blah, blah. I mean, 1 parking. So, does that mean you're seconding?
Sure.
It's like pulling teeth. Yeah,
It includes, by the way, the special exception requirements.
yes.
Okay, I'm just making sure I understand.
Okay, do I need to read this into it? No, okay, good. Okay. Which will include the special exception requirement, that's correct.
I just want to make sure
Yes.
everything.
Yes.
It's on the record.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Yeah, hit me. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed?
There's not anything I could have said to you to make you happy, huh?
I guess so.
Right, and the effective date will be a week from tomorrow, the 26th, right? January 26th? Yeah. January 26th.
And am I including Catherine's comments in terms of it being in compliance with the town plan as part of the comment that we have?
Well, it's kind of what I was saying at the beginning, when I was
It's part of the
going,
motion.
when I was going through. All right. Well, I'm sorry, it wasn't 14 minutes. Oh, Diane, what address do we put in for you?
52 North Peace.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
Jane.
night.
Good night.
When do we have to, when do we have to start having the public informational sessions about the larger plans?
I'm going along, and I'd like to get it going. I wanted to do it already.
Yeah, that's why, that was the source of my confusion, that we were only, I understood we were only talking about that, but,
Well, we did it, we did actually evidently have the option way back when of saying that, just denying his thing and just saying we're waiting for our new regulations to come in. Well, we didn't do that, we chose to give it to him. So that's why we're where we are. So we could have maybe avoided this kind of, but we didn't. And so we are where we are. And we fixed the potential problem. And now we can move on to the rest of it, focus on it again. She's been working on it, Marion's been reviewing it from a legal perspective. So I think, I mean, I'm telling her I want us to get going like, February at the latest. Because otherwise we're spending a lot of time.
Is that for informational, or will that be the actual hearings?
Well, I think we talked about doing at least one more informational meeting. And then I think depending on the number of people who show up at the informational meeting, we can decide whether we need 2, or we can just go to it and just set up a public hearing. So, I know what you're gonna talk about. So we're good? Is there a motion over here?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor? All right, thank you guys.